Well, hey,
Happy
everybody.
Monday.
Well, is it though?
Well, you know what? The sun was shining.
Mm-hmm.
The sky was blue.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to subtract all the chemtrails that were in the sky, it's literally everywhere. I've got Senior Canucks saying that the chemtrails in Bowmanville were ridiculous. Well, I will tell you what, as I was reading over Bill C63, which our show is on, I sat outside on the deck because it was beautiful and warm and the sun was shining.
Agreed.
But our skies were filled with nothing but chemtrails too.
Right. Hey, yeah, we were on the government website today regarding that bill, and I looked it up, and they're actually pronounced contrails.
No, contrails is something that passenger airplanes give off, and they dissipate almost immediately. Chemtrails stay in the sky and make wonderful crisscross patterns all over the place. And then they eventually do this and spread out and block the sun.
It's like a new winter.
Block the sun and rain down chemicals on us and ruin all of our gardens. But we are not here to talk about chemtrails tonight, are we, Chris?
No, Princess Diana. What are we here to talk about?
If only I had the money that Princess Diana has. We are talking about Bill C63, which some people on social media are talking about and other people are not, have no clue it even exists. But my golly geez gosh, people really need to be paying attention because this one has the potential to possibly put an end to all elections, possibly put an end to all free expression, free speech, dissent against our government, dissent against anything that our government is in favor of.
Yeah, so it's put together by the Minister of Justice, Arif Virani. So we're looking up past bills of his, and this man has no regard for the rule of law. He has no regard for Canadian freedoms. He has no regard for the Canadian Chamber of Commerce.
Maybe no regard for them too.
The Charter of Rights and Freedoms, the Canadian Constitution, all of that stuff. No regard for any of that stuff. But he's the
Minister of Justice.
Yes, and that's concerning. So this now is getting some attention with this bill, and of course everybody's talking about was it Section 810-023 or something like that. What? Yeah,
all of the 810s, which is the criminal code 810.
Yeah. Anyway, it's talking basically about how they can prosecute you and put you in jail based on you might commit a crime. So that's the thought crime, and that's future crimes, and that's
is that Minority Report?
Yeah, it's Minority Report. And can you imagine walking through the mall and having all the billboards yell at you like that? What a dystopian nightmare that would be.
No, thank you.
Anyway, so we're looking at past bills of his, and he has supported a bill that increases the reverse onus law for certain crimes. So now instead of innocent until proven guilty, you're guilty until proven innocent. That's one bill.
Thank you, Minister of Justice, who has absolutely zero understanding of the rule of law in Canada.
Right. And then he made a commission that can order that they reviews miscarriages of justice. So usually when they're talking about justice, you got to know their language. They're talking about cases that benefit the court or the crown and not us. So they have a commission that's putting forward a miscarriage of justice commission, and they can order any trial back to trial. So you found innocent, they can order you back to trial for another trial.
Double jeopardy? What is that?
Right. Yeah.
What is that?
Oh, so ironic.
That's not a thing. That's something you only see in movies.
Tonight on Double Jeopardy. What is Double Jeopardy? So
for 500, Alex.
Yeah, so they can order you back to court, and you know that. I mean, the primary function of courts these days seems to be breaking us of our money, like stripping us of our money, and just trying to break us financially, and it increases the coffers of the legal system. But it breaks good people who are fighting for justice, right?
Yes, it does. And I don't think you covered that in the slides, how it funds itself.
I think I did. Yeah, I did.
You?
I'm pretty sure I did, unless I accidentally saved over top of it.
We will come back to that.
We will. We will. Yes. So without further ado, let's get into Bill C63 here. So I guess we have to kind of talk about it. It's an act to enact the Online Harms Act, to amend the Criminal Code, the Canadian Human Rights Act, an act respecting the mandatory reporting of internet child pornography by persons who provide an internet service, and make consequential and related amendments for other acts. So here's what's vile about that portion. Cracking down on child pornography.
Sounds
Good.
fabulous.
Let's
All for it.
cut, print, done. Yeah, let's do that.
All for it.
But this bill doesn't do that. This bill actually uses child pornography laws to make it look like that's what they're fighting for. But really, it's a shield to push through so many other things. And at the end of the day, actually could end up harming kids more than doing
Than protecting them.
than protecting them. So this is not above and beyond the fact that this is just a badly written bill. It is very dangerous, and we can't normally we go through these bills in a linear way. We can't do that with this bill because
well, we could, but we'd be here all night.
yeah,
It's what is it, 88 pages or 100 pages?
100
or,
pages long.
Yeah,
So we could do
it's
it. And I
crazy
know
long.
that you hardcore people out there, some of you would stick with us to the bitter frickin' end. I'd be out about halfway, but but the thing is, it sort of folds back on itself. So it makes all these it sets all this foundation, and then it'll throw something in there that'll just negate the foundation. So it kind of folds in on itself. So we can't really do it in a linear fashion. We just sort of have to attack it in the spirit in which I think it was written.
The spirit in which it was written, which is
No,
really
I think it was written.
which is
Subjective.
really about protecting the criminals, not the victims,
Exactly right. So I don't know where you want to start.
and creating more jobs for the government.
Holy, that's the number one thing. It's creating commissions and
Just another way for the
ombudsman
government to
offices.
money launder money to their friends.
Well, it's looking somewhat like that. That's a very definitive statement.
Well, it's a subjective statement. That's
mm,
my opinion. In my opinion, the government is
By humble
creating
opinion.
jobs to
Okay.
money launder more jobs or more money to their
Right.
friends for who knows what purposes,
yeah. So
under
we're
the
gonna
guise of child protection.
we're gonna do some key things here and sort of give you the spirit of the bill. And a lot of these things people are not talking about because they're so involved with the thought crime portion of it, which is there, and it's
Which is
pretty
huge.
egregious. Yeah.
But we've decided we're going to deal with really the pigs of the bill.
The pigs of
The
the bill.
pigs. The pigs.
Right. And I know, for
the
me,
mud, the muck,
yeah.
the gross garbage of the bill.
I'm gonna be honest with you. If I were watching a show and somebody say, "Hey, we're gonna go through a bill tonight," I'd be like, "Click, see you later, goodbye." But this one actually surpasses. We have North Korea as our opening graphic. This one surpasses North Korea. It is brutal. It's a brutal bill, and we are really, really dangerously close to losing what little shred of freedom we have in this country if this bill goes through. And I'm so far as to say, if any MP who votes for this is in favor of pedophilia, that's where I'm going with
100%.
that. So if that's your MP,
100%.
she supports pedophilia.
And if we actually make it to election, take note of who votes in favor of this bill, and definitely do not give your vote to them.
Right. Yeah. In true gaslighting fashion, what they say they're protecting, they're actually
Doing the
throwing
opposite.
throwing under the bus. So
Yeah.
So you've
It's
got
like, hey, let's send money to Ukraine and we're with Ukraine. In the middle of that bill, let's throw carbon tax on top of our Canadian taxpayers, and hopefully they won't notice that that's in there.
see, that's what they do. They use these things to shield stuff that should never have gone through in the first place. And anybody who votes against this, they're going to accuse of
Not caring about children.
not caring about children, wanting to throw them, not wanting
You
to
were
crack down on
accused of
child.
not caring about children.
Yes, I was, by a government agent who pretended to not be a government agent.
Yeah.
Yes, I was when I
Because
called
you
them out
asked
on
the
their crap.
I was going to say, because you asked a simple question that everybody should have been asking, and
Right.
you pointed out the obvious that nobody
Yeah.
else seemed to care about.
Well, if that's all it takes, then you obviously don't care about kids. Nice try. Yeah, good one. All right. So you have the comms because you have all this stuff. So
I
you
do
want
have-
to chart. So you want to start with some of the definitions, which are in
I
itself
did. The
brutal.
definitions are really, really brutal. And in a lot of bills, the definitions are super uber important, because if you don't understand what a word means, or you think it means something else, because a lot of these words in legalese have 2, 3, 4 different meanings. So you really need, when you're looking at bills, really need to pay attention to the definitions that they offer at the beginning, because the definition may be very different from what you think it is. Now, thankfully, on this one, child means anyone under the age of 18. So everywhere you see child in here, they're really talking about minors. So anyone 18 and younger.
Right, but that's got a caveat, because in BC, what they're doing is they're using the informed minor law, and so the mature minor law. So basically, everybody under 19 is a minor. So they're saying like 18-year-olds can make up their own mind, so they're allowed to consent for themselves.
Not
But-
with this bill, though.
But the gotcha there is no, I think they built 336. I think in BC did that. But the gotcha there is that now they can apply that law to kids underneath that as well. So 5-year-olds, they're saying, can now, as long as
They're mature
as long as
minors.
you explain it to them, they're mature enough to make their own decision. So they're doing this catch-all with minors. So there is you'd think anything under 18 that's protecting kids, but there is this catch-all that they've been using in BC for about a year now.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say, there's another province where I think minor age is, I think, 16. But most of the provinces across Canada, it is 18, but they do define it in here. So even if you're in BC, it applies to 18-year-olds and younger.
Yep.
They talk about content that formats hatred, and they have that definition as means content that expresses detestation or vilification of an individual or group of individuals on the basis of a prohibited ground of discrimination within the meaning of the Canadian Human Rights Act. And that's another thing this bill does, is it refers to, there's like probably 4 or 5 other acts that it refers to on top of bills that are currently being introduced in the House or going through the House and Senate process. So there's a lot of bills that you have to kind of go back and forth in between. Now, the nice thing about this printout is that it actually gave us some of the bills that were already that it refers to, which was fantastic, but it did not give us, or it gave us the acts, that it refers to, but it didn't give us the bills necessarily that it refers to. So we had to go back and forth. It talks about content that incites violence, means content that actively encourages a person to commit or that actively threatens the commission of an act of physical violence against a person or an act that causes property damage, and that given the context in which it is communicated could cause thought process, could cause a person to commit an act that could cause seriously bodily harm to a person's life to be endangered, or serious interference with or serious disruption of an essential service facility or system.
Right. So not a crime, just a could crime.
Could possibly lead somebody else
maybe.
because of what you said to maybe go and do something. Maybe.
Technically, that's not new. That's been on the books for a long time. If you incite hatred or violence against another group, that's been on the books forever.
Content that incites violent extremism or terrorism.
Now, that's what we need to talk about, because this bill you're going to find is very subjective. So it can be applied one way or another way. And we know that the laws are not being applied equally. Case in point, I wanted to prove the case that the government is unduly cracking down on right-wing extremism, but completely ignoring left-wing extremism. And as much as I'd love to make a huge case, that could take an hour. I did some prelim researches on the Canada.ca website. If you look up left-wing extremism, there's 2 mentions, and it's really not in context. And then if you look up right-wing extremism, there's 4 pages of results, and there's funding for studies for right-wing extremists, and not for them, but about the subject. So they're funding universities to kind of deal with the subject. I even came across an interview where the guy says, if it's a left-wing organization, but they look like they have racist tendencies, then we just recategorize them into right-wing. So basically they're saying, if they look like they're racist, then we're going to just make them right-wing. So that's how it looks like leftists have no racist tendencies whatsoever. And then, and then there's the smaller things, like they've listed off even like Diagolong, which is not a terrorist organization, but they listed as one. And then you look at the Proud Boys, who are listed as a terrorist organization, not because of anything they've done in Canada, but because of what their cohorts did at J6. They showed up at J6. So therefore, Proud Boys in Canada were labeled a terrorist organization. But Antifa, who has actually killed people in the States, are not labeled as a terrorist organization, which are left-wing extremists in Canada. And Black Lives Matter, which burnt like US to the ground.
Mm-hmm. Well, even in Montreal, Black Lives Matter, they tore up Montreal, set things on fire, ripped down statues, looted stores, and they're not considered a terrorist group.
And they're not listed as terrorist organizations.
No.
So what we're saying is, do we have any faith that this subjective law will be applied equally under the law? No, we do not believe that at all.
No. So the definition for content that incites violent extremism or terrorism means content that actively encourages a person to commit or that actively threatens the commission of, for a political, religious, or ideological purpose, an act of physical violence against a person or an act that causes property damage with the intention of intimidating or denouncing the public or any section of the public, or for compelling a person, government, or domestic international organization to do or to refrain from doing an act, and that given the context in which it is communicated could cause a person to commit an act that could cause, again, could cause seriously bodily harm to a person's life to be endangered, or a serious risk to the health or safety of the public or any section of the public. The next one under that, the definition is content that induces a child to harm themselves. And I thought that was interesting that they put this in here, because right now, doctors and schools and counselors, if a child says to them, and they're a female, and they say, "Oh, I think I'm a boy," they actually counsel them into transforming or taking puberty blockers, which actually harms them for all of their future self-life. And yet this talks about that, but none of those people are ever going to go to jail for this. And it says content that induces a child to harm themselves means content that advocates self-harm, mutilating your genitals, I would consider as self-harm, disordered eating, or dying by suicide. We do have Made for Children now. Or that counsels a person to commit or engage in any of those acts, and that given the context in which it is communicated, could cause a child to inflict injury on themselves, or to have an eating disorder, or to die by suicide. And yet, here we have laws on the books that counsel children to do all of those things. Mm-hmm. And if you try and not counsel children or conversion therapy, help them with these issues, you're the one that goes to jail. If you try and counsel them out of self-mutilating their bodies or taking puberty blockers. So it's interesting that they have that in there.
And now what you'll say, a reasonable person would say, well, then we can use this law, obviously, to crack down on that stuff because they're breaking the law. But no, there's a provision that says if the content provider or the person who's been flagged, they find that is vexatious or anyway, if it's frivolous, vexatious, and it's made out of spite, then they can just dismiss that case. So that's, again, subjective.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They have another definition: content that sexually victimizes a child or re-victimizes a survivor. It's exactly what it says. There's nothing about that. So
here are the 4 parts, really. I'd love to go through all of the definitions, but being 100 pages, we're not going to have time to do all that.
Well, did you want to go through harmful content, minister, and
we can talk about that in half. So this
person.
basically how the bill is broken down. Part 1 establishes a regulatory body, including the Digital Safety Commission. Part 2 amends the criminal code, further defines hate speech. Part 3 includes internet and telecommunications. Like, we didn't need that. Like, it's already included in hate speech, right? Part 4, mandatory internet reporting of child pornography. Awesome. Yeah, we love that. Although there's a lot of caveats and yada, yada, yada. And then part 5 adds amendments to another section. So that's how that's going to get broken down. But you still want to do 1 or 2 more of these?
Well, you did minister. Minister means the member of the King's Privy Council for Canada designated under Section 8, or if no member is designated, the Minister of Canadian Heritage. So, you know, we've asked several people who are members of the Privy Council what exactly it is that they do. And we're told time and time and time again that they are there for ceremonial purposes only, that they attend funerals, and they put together the coronation ceremonies. That's what we keep being told. But here it is that the minister who is named in here as someone that is appointed to oversee this is got to be somebody from the King's Privy Council. So that tells me they're not just a ceremonial figure.
Yeah, we keep talking to people in the Privy Council and we keep saying, well, what's the Privy Council? And there's a pat answer we get every single time. And then it's really nothing more than ceremonial and administrative. And then we find out Blacklock's found 33 orders in council last year that were secret, all sorts of stuff. So.
And for all those who love the sovereign law, the common law versus the law that we have, maritime law versus common law, you will love this because it defines a person as includes a corporation and a trust, a partnership, a fund, a joint venture, and any other unincorporated association or organization. Notice how it doesn't say a male, a female, a person, a human being. Right. Everything has to do with corporate law. So I thought that you all would find that really quite interesting.
Yeah, the way they're trying to sell the bill is that it's all about social media platforms and streaming services that could provide child pornography content, any way to redistribute electronically any kind of child pornography content, whether it's audio, video, pictures, or whatnot. So they are going to be held accountable for any of their content, and that's the way it's being sold. But you know, we got to dig deeper.
It goes beyond that. And just for reiteration's sake, harmful content means A, intimate content communicated without consent. B, content that sexually victimizes a child or re-victimizes a survivor. C, content that induces a child to harm themselves. D, content used to bully a child. E, content that foments hatred. F, content that incites violence. And G, content that incites violent extremism or terrorism. So that is the harmful content that they are talking about all through this bill.
Okay. Yeah. So content that formates hatred of an individual group that is protected under the Canadian Human Rights Act. So the purposes of this act are prohibited grounds of discrimination are race, national or ethnic origin, color, religion, age, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, marital status, family status, genetic characteristics, disability, and conviction for an offense for which a person has been pardoned or granted in respect with the record. So those are normal protected grounds. The gender identity got added in, I think, in 2020, I think.
Probably in the last few years.
Down, gender identity got added in fairly recently. Yeah, so that's what they're talking about as far as discrimination goes. So for online harms, where they're really talking about child pornography or trying to sell it as child pornography. Now we start talking into offenses on race and basically ethnic slurs and anything that can get you in trouble, right?
Or ideological slurs.
Right. So here's where it gets expensive for Canada. So the governor in council is to appoint a digital safety ombudsman person,
Well, wait a
It's hard
minute.
to
I
say.
believe the minister of the Privy Council appoints the governor and council, who then appoints the digital safety
Yes.
ombudsperson of
Right.
Canada's.
That's hard to say.
It
And then
is.
on the recommendation of the minister, the governor and council is to appoint the chief executive officer of the office. Now, here's the thing. That's the point. These people are going to be responsible for putting people in jail, and they're not elected officials.
Correct.
So they were never elected, and they're appointed.
They're not elected officials.
Like a judge.
They're appointed. And there's, as of right now, there's no stipulation that they must have experience or understanding of the law.
Right. So the commission's mandate is to promote safety in Canada. And every time they use the word safety, what does that mean? That they're not talking about your safety.
They're talking about their own safety.
No,
Realistically, their safety and their friends' safety.
They use safety to make more laws to keep us from doing anything. So safety basically means anti-freedom in Canada, and contribute to the reduction of online harms caused in persons in Canada as a result of harmful content online by and among other things. And then it lists off, but the one we want to talk about is ensuring the administration and enforcement of this act. So that's part of their mandate. So they are given the green light to enforce laws and send people to prison.
But did you see how many people they're going to hire?
Just offices. They're creating offices and offices for this.
They're creating the Safety Digital Online Office. They're creating the Safety Digital Commissioner Office. They're creating an office of employees. And then you've got the CEO who gets to also appoint officers. And then you also have designated persons that will investigate the crimes as well. And all of these people get paid as employees of Canada. They all receive benefits, and they all receive a pension plan as well. And their term is for 5 years. And after 5 years, it can be renewed if this law stays on the books.
Yeah, what did I read? That 1 in 5 people now work for the government, some level of government now.
Since Trudeau took over, federal employee jobs went from, I believe it was like 110,000 people to 250,000 people. And this bill, should
That's
it get
1 in 5.
No, it's doubled. It's more than doubled how many federal employees there have been since 2015. So Trudeau's Liberals, and I guess I should say Liberal NDP coalition, if I'm going to be correct in what I'm saying, they are fabulous at creating jobs for their friends' children's, their families, children, all of their friends and families are guaranteed jobs with the federal government, with pension, with excellent benefits, because they just keep bringing through bills like this that just continue to create jobs for their friends. And none of these jobs are elected jobs. And none of these jobs are our MPs or current administrators expected to take on. These are all new positions. So when the government talks about...
Well, they'll hire within, I'm sure, and then fill the other positions.
Well, they won't hire within. They'll hire without, but it'll all be their friends. They're not hiring within because those people already have jobs. So they're not applying for this when they have to renew this contract every 5 years. They're not applying
Usually
for this.
That's how it works. Usually you hire within, and then you fill the positions that can't be hired from within. But that said, the other thing that as we went through the slides earlier, I don't think I saw it, so I must have saved over it somehow. The way they're going to fill their budget, the way they're going to finance their office.
How they're going to finance their budget is anyone who is found guilty of a crime under this act, they will have monetary damages that they're going to have to pay. And those damages are going to be what funds the people and the act and the investigators. So in order for these people to continue being employed, they actually have to go out there and find the perpetrators. So they're going to be looking for you and me and all of our friends who are posting stuff that they don't agree with, because again, it is guilt before innocence. And there's all kinds of these amazing reconnaissance things and plea bargains that are going to be offered, and all of those monetary funds collected from those penalties will go to pay their salaries.
Huzzah, Hesham's here.
Hey, Hesham. So you better be assured that if this goes through, they are coming at you like gangbusters.
Right. I'm sure they have a budget, a working budget, but you know how all government departments want to grow their empire. This is how they're going to grow their empire. So there's intentionally a lot of incentive to prosecute people under this new law.
Yeah, because it's not going to be funded by taxpayer money. It's going to be funded by criminal money.
Right.
And criminal could be you and me. Just for having this show on and talking about this, we could potentially be brought under charges for this.
Yeah. So the definition content that sexually victimizes a child or re-victimizes a survivor. I think you went over this. These are the exemptions to people who aren't included in this possible online harms. So they get a pass, and there's a legitimate purpose related to the administration of justice or science, medicine, education, or art, and do not pose an undue risk of harm to children. But they outlined the harm to children, and basically that negates its own definition. And then so the person's primary purpose is to conduct research or engage in education, advocacy, or awareness activities. The commission may be a person that is accredited. We'll get into that in a second. So basically, the people we automatically think of are the people shaking their junk at kids.
Drag queens,
Soji,
Pride Day, Pride parades.
Exactly.
You're all exempt from this.
Yeah. We think of Soji, exemptions for education, activities like activist activities, art, awareness. So all of the things that we would say could get shut down under this bill are given exemptions.
Yeah. So all those hideous books that are currently sitting in our primary and elementary schools teaching children how to give blowjobs, actual instructions on how to have anal sex, those are okay. And pictures depicting it are okay.
Yes, they're real, folks. Yeah.
It's not harmful to children because it is for educational purposes. So it's exempt from this.
Right. And in the case where it's not educational, it can be construed as art. Now, just going back to this for half a second, if you catch the last part there, commission may give a person that is accredited under subsection 1 access to the inventories of electronic data referred to in that subsection. So basically, the bill is saying
we have a whole bunch of this pornographic activity.
Right.
In our inventory, you can access because you are accredited.
Right.
Because we like you.
They will give you a license to show this stuff. So you have to apply for a license. So schools can apply for a license and they can show that. Now, Jody and I, who want to show you what the school is showing these kids, which we did a whole show on once, and it was like we pulled back because it was so disgusting, and elementary kids saw these things, and there were flashcards, and some of these flashcards we just chose not to show on the air because it was Jody got educated like through those cards. So anyway, we can't show that to show you what the schools are showing you because we don't have a license, but the schools will be able to do that. Now, we could argue that we're showing it under awareness, and so therefore, but we're not showing it to kids either. Yeah. Right.
And the other thing is you also get an exemption, or you can use this reasoning as a defense if you're brought up on these charges. Well, I did my due diligence and I thought I was okay. Oh, right. You know what? Okay, we'll let it pass this time. We'll let it pass.
There's a provision that if you do your due diligence, so scenario, girl in little young girls walking through the street, it's Pride Day, they turn around, bunch of guys in junk. Dad gets upset. He makes a complaint. They call that complaint vexatious.
And
if it goes anywhere and they post it to social media and somebody puts it in complaint, social media argues under the government directive that
this is activism and an educational.
Yeah. And I did my due diligence. So if I've gone over the line, that's what your bill says. So I should get a pass. And they'll go, yeah, you should get a pass.
You're right. You did your due diligence.
Now, in that process, here's the other thing that you need to be aware of. Before, if there was offensive content, somebody would flag it and the social media platform would remove it. But you could argue. So it was always subjective. Sometimes they remove, sometimes they wouldn't. Now, here's where it gets really dicey for us, and it's really not has anything to do with child pornography, and this is why that bill is so insidious, because they're using child porn to mask this stuff. The government can direct the social media company to remove content because someone has flagged it. Who flagged it? Don't need to know. As a matter of fact, if you tell anyone who flagged it, if it was anonymous, you can get a fine for $5,000 and $10,000.
And it doesn't even have to be anonymous. If the person who flagged it or made the complaint says, I want my name to remain confidential and where I got the information to remain confidential, then they're not allowed to say who flagged it, who called it, who complained about it, and where they saw it. All they know is that they can go in and seize your information or demand it be brought down, and they get to hold on to it for the next year or more.
Right. So when it comes to child pornography, reasonable. Everybody's on board with that. Let's get it off the air as soon as possible, and let's hunt down those people who exploited those kids. All for that. But when it comes to political dissidents, so if you don't like Trudeau, and you say, you know, Trudeau's a douche stick, for example.
Trudeau's killing your kids. Anita Anand signed an agreement that clearly states they're going to kill your kids. It's clearly not safe and effective. It's clearly experimental, and we don't know what it's going to do. But we say that, and we say she's killing your kids. We could be brought up on charges.
But until then, maybe not charges. I don't know if the government would. Who knows at this point?
That content would be taken down. The Pfizer contract would be taken down.
The content would be taken down by the government or by somebody who phoned and made a complaint. So the government directive now is to take that content down, and then could it be the government that called it in? We don't know. And so it sits in limbo, and so they could essentially remove all political dissident content. So you'd see nothing but liberal friendly content.
And then in the meantime, they would run an investigation on Chris and I, where we got the content from, how long we had the content up, what we said about the content. And if they decide, because this is all subjective, if they decide that from what we said, somebody may decide to go out and harm Anita Anand, then we are guilty of a crime. Just for bringing you the bill and saying she knew. We are guilty of a crime because somebody may be incited to harm Anita Anand. Therefore, we're the ones guilty of a crime. We're the ones that are going to have monetary penalties against us and possibly jail time. On top of our social media accounts being deleted and taken down.
So good point there. The police won't have the ability. They don't have the resources.
Oh, it's not the police
to enforce all of that.
Here's the thing. It's not the police. Remember, we said they are hiring their own team of investigators that will be funded by the charges that come through.
But don't forget, they don't need to enforce everyone. What they need to do is enforce the big ones. They need to do some key accounts and make an example of them, and then everybody will start falling in line. And that's the way it's been before, right? So where are we here? The commission is not bound by any legal or technical rules of evidence. It must deal with all matters that come before it and informally and expeditiously as the circumstances and considerations of fairness and natural justice permit. Translation: the commission does not need to adhere to an actual law. It will be based on subjective opinions which are enforceable by actual law. Also see gaslighting.
Which is why they won't be using the police to do these investigations, because police are bound by law.
So natural justice, natural law is what they're talking about. And so the theory is like society has natural laws, like you shall not kill, regardless of what laws are in the books. With the natural law is you don't kill one another.
Freedom with moral responsibility.
But look at how many natural laws our government is already violating. So they don't get to dictate what's natural law. So it makes it, again, completely up to the commission's decision, and it's very subjective. So you get a liberal government in, it's the conservatives are going to get washed out. If you have a conservative government in that is trying to get back at 6, 7, 8 years of liberal injustice, then the liberals are going to get washed out. It's never set up to be an impartial, completely balanced system because it's completely subjective, therefore at the whims of people's biases. Correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
It's all subjective. So yeah, we thought that that was really important to understand that the rule of law plays no part in anywhere in C63, which also means because they do not have to abide by any legal or technical rules of evidence, it means they don't need a warrant to come into your house and seize your computers, your phones, your printers, your USB drives, your books. They don't need your guns if they happen to see guns there or someone complains that you have a gun. They don't need a warrant now under this bill to do that.
Well, it does say they need a warrant, but then it goes on to say,
but this section says they don't
under
need.
separate circumstances. Yeah. So every operator that commits a offense contravenes an order of the commission. Now that's really important because there is no guideline. There's no set rule of law. It's all subjective. And so far, there are a bunch of rules and regulations that are yet to be set out by the commission. So the government is now taking the power of lawmaking out of their own hands, and they're giving it to this minor kingdom,
to the appointed commissioner,
right?
to
Which
make
they did
the
with the
regulation.
CRTC, which they've done with different.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
which may now also be another reason why they have exempted any rule of law of evidence being applied here, because the people who are going to be making the regulations most likely don't understand the rule of law of evidence, probably don't have even knowledge of the law and what is expected. And that's why it's being exempted.
So here's the big one that's getting all the attention right now. 810.012. A person may, with the Attorney General's consent, lay an information before a provincial court judge if the person fears on reasonable grounds that another person will commit an offense under section 318 or subsections, or an offense under section 320. You got to go into the bill to see exactly what those are. We've gone back and forth so many times. Yeah. But there it is. That is a precedent setting law.
Fear and possibility of committing. So fear and thought, that's what's running this bill. And it's not just about sexual exploitation of children. It's not about sexual abuse of a children. It's about any harm, any fear, any bullying, any harm that you think could come to you, any offense, any hatred that you subjectively feel is coming your way fits very nicely into this bill. And your fear doesn't have to be rational. And most fears are irrational. So based on fear alone, you could be arrested under this bill for something you haven't done yet, but simply because of an opinion you have, or because you shared something you saw that may even have offended you or horrified you, but because you shared it and it played on the fears of somebody else, and they felt that maybe they could be hurt or maybe they are offended, you are going to be arrested, your life turned upside down, possibly your home invaded, possibly your assets seized.
Mm-hmm. I mean, love is love, adult loving children. That's love too. No, it's not. Not that kind of love that you're talking about. That's pedophilia. Oh, that's offensive.
But they're trying to make pedophilia another
They've been trying
sexual
to do that,
identity, right? that would fall under protection of the Human Rights Code.
So in theory, somebody wants to put that out there and they know you're going to call them out because that's who you are. They can
Be arrested.
No, they can say this person's going to cause me undue stress because they've been bullying me because of my sexual preferences, or I'm just trying to raise an awareness. You actually can be brought up and suspended for that. So what are those offenses? The provincial court judge before whom the parties appear is satisfied by the evidence adduced that the informant has a reasonable grounds for the fear. The judge may order that defendant enter into recognizance to keep the peace and to be of good behavior.
Good behavior, very
for a period
subjective.
of not more than 12 months. So they can put you under so you're on probation for 12 months. However, if the provincial court judge is also satisfied that the defendant was convicted previously of any offense referred to in subsection 1, the judge may order that defendant enter into the recognizance for a period of not more than 2 years. Refusal to enter into recognizance. No, thank you.
Because
That's
you don't
unjust.
agree that you did anything wrong.
You didn't
besides
do
have an
anything.
opinion, perhaps, or show someone a book that you're absolutely horrified is in our elementary schools.
Yeah. You haven't been on Facebook for 1 year and somebody says, oh, I might be afraid that they might come back and they might say something. Well, then you're on probation for 12 months. What? And then you get on probation for another 12 months. Now you're under probation for 2 years. And what?
And you still haven't done
I haven't done
anything.
anything. I've just been walking. I ate a sandwich.
And it's all based on somebody's reasonable grounds for fear, which again is subjective. And you have to remember that there's a definition in here that says a victim who feels re-victimized or possibly re-victimized. So I'm a survivor of sexual abuse. So if I see something that someone has and it takes me back to a time when I was very fearful, frozen in fear, I can now make a complaint anonymously, request that my name be left out of it, and that person, based on my fear, based on a past experience I had that had nothing to do with that person can now be brought up on charges and have their life absolutely destroyed and turned upside down for at least a year, possibly longer, and possibly financially speaking.
Right. So you're going to have to get off social media forever. No, that's not fair. I'm not doing that. That's ridiculous because we don't have thought crimes here in Canada because that's what separates us from North Korea and China and all those horrible places.
Not anymore.
Right. And the judge says, well, you don't want to play ball? Then the provincial court judge may commit the defendant to prison now for a term of not more than 12 months. If the defendant fails or refuses to enter into the recognizant. Well, that would be reasonable. I haven't committed a crime. I refuse to be committed or punished for a crime I didn't commit. The provincial court judge may then add any reasonable conditions to the recognizance that the judge considers desirable to secure the good conduct of the defendant, to make you play nice and be a good boy or girl.
And it doesn't say,
and those
because
are the only two options, by the way.
And the regulations are not written yet. So it doesn't say how the judge is going to consider the extra conduct or the extra desirable penalty against you in order to get the good conduct. And we all know, anyone who has witnessed trials being done in the courts, before the judge usually hands down a sentence, especially if it's like rape or murder or something like that, they usually allow victim statements to come into play. So if they allow witness statements or victim statements to come into play, a victim or perceived victim might have some sway over a judge over a crime you didn't commit, but they subjectively felt you may commit because of something you said or something you showed on social media.
Well, and that's the thing. They can use your past now and come forward and say, based on what they've said in the past, I'm afraid they're going to say something in the future. Now, what you've said in the past might have been perfectly acceptable, right? Like to wear blackface in the 90s. That might have been perfectly acceptable, even though we know it wasn't even acceptable back then.
Yeah.
But now it could come back to haunt you, and they could use that to say, well, I think that they might say something in the future. So therefore, So the judge can make you wear an electronic monitor device. And then this is where most people start to care. Abstain from the consumption of drugs except in accordance with medical prescription, of alcohol or any other intoxicating substances. And then a couple of things where they order you into an intrusive substance test. We'll get into that later. But
and curfews and handing over. Oh no, you have a slide for that. I'm not going to jump ahead. Handing over firearms.
oh yeah, we'll talk about that. But make you hand over your passwords, shut down your social media accounts. You're banned from Facebook. You're banned, basically shutting you up if you have a contrarian point of view. Which let me remind you.
Yeah.
Used to be as early as 2014, you used to be able to have an opposing view. I mean, that was
anymore.
The way it was.
It can also ban you from going places. So it can ban you from going to a grocery store.
Ankle monitor.
Ankle monitors, but also it doesn't necessarily mean you have an ankle monitor. It might be that you're not allowed to go to your favorite restaurant anymore because the victim goes there all the time. So the victim's rights are going to outweigh yours. It could be that you're not allowed to go to the grocery store anymore. You're not allowed to travel beyond 100 kilometers of your home. It could be any of these types of things. It could be that you're not even allowed to visit your nieces or nephews anymore.
Right. Now, here's where this gets even worse. Abstain from communicating directly or indirectly with any person identified in the recognizance. So the anonymous person who phoned in the tip, you have no idea who you offended. You can't communicate directly or indirectly. So you post on Facebook and somebody else tags that anonymous person without your knowledge. Now you've communicated indirectly with any person identified in the recognizance, or refrain from going to any place specified in the recognizance. I think we just mentioned that, except in accordance with the conditions specified in the recognizance that judge considers necessary.
So you might not have done anything wrong. Somebody may have tagged you. It shows up on your post on your social media, and it's not even you doing it, but you're the one that's going to get nailed for it. Or as Chris said, somebody tags or sees your post and then shares it on their post or tags somebody, and you're the one that's going to get nailed, and you literally did nothing wrong.
So here, the provincial court judge shall consider whether it is desirable in the interest of the defendant's safety or that of any other person. This defendant who did anything wrong, they might be deemed danger to themselves or that of any other person, to prohibit the defendant from possessing any firearm, crossbows even, prohibited weapon, restricted weapons, prohibited device, ammunition, prohibited ammunition, explosive substances, or all of those things. If the judge decides it is desirable to do so, the judge shall add the condition to the recognizance and specify the period during which it applies. Now, we talked about needing a warrant, but Bill C-21 means that if there's any worry about your mental state, somebody anonymously can call in, and they can come in now without a warrant and seize any property that they want, including your guns, without a warrant.
They can even confiscate your knives. They can confiscate any fireworks that you have in your home, sparklers that you have in your home. And if by chance the device you use to share whatever opinion it was, or share the books that are being shown in the school of your child, your devices could include your smartphone, could include your tablets, could include your laptops, your computers, and there is nothing you can do or say about it.
Bill C-21 saw to that. So even though this bill mentions warrants, Bill C-21 kind of like, if you get them, if they're going to get you, if the judge thinks that you're a danger to yourself or others and you're because of your firearms, that actually enacts Bill C-21, and they can take that stuff without a warrant.
Well, not just that. It says in this one here, it does not cover the rules of evidence. It said it. We put it up on screen. So this here bill also says they don't necessarily need a warrant to come in. They do not have to follow the rules of evidence. Rules of evidence means warrants.
No, I mean, they do state a warrant, but you're right. They negate it a little bit later. In the beginning of the bill, they state it. But I think I want to make the point that our bills are now working in conjunction with one another to actually negate warrants even. And Bill C-21 should have been the end red flag for us, because that negates us. But all of this, all of those negate those warrants.
At the end of the day, the bill is convoluted. It says one thing one place, says another thing another place, and then gives
Yes.
perpetrators an excuse out.
Exactly right. It actually, instead of saving children, it actually creates a window for the people you would think that would exploit it to exploit it. And then we just want to go back to the super intrusive yada yada samples for a second. The Attorney General of a province, of the Minister of Justice of a territory, or a person authorized by the Attorney General Minister shall cause all samples of bodily substances. It doesn't define what. You think you're doing a pee sample? Maybe not.
Could be semen, could be pee, could be poop, could be mucus from your nose, could be saliva, or it could be your blood.
Yeah, they may come a milking you unvaccinated studs. So anyway, within the period prescribed in regulation, unless the samples are reasonably expected to be used as evidence in a proceeding or an offense under Section 811. So yours doesn't say. Is it your offense? Is it your proceeding?
Could be any
Doesn't
proceeding.
say. And then the results of an analyst of a bodily substance provided under recognizance sections, yada, yada, may be disclosed to the defendant to whom they relate, and also may be used or disclosed in the course of an investigation or in proceedings of an offense under, if the results are made anonymous for statistical or other research purposes. So does your DNA ever have to be destroyed under these laws?
No.
Well, that is the correct answer.
No. And we do know that our governments have DNA banks. We know that there's a sexual predator DNA bank.
Yes.
We know that there is a crimes DNA bank. So is your DNA going into that? Or is it going into a third party unelected organization's DNA bank, such as maybe, I don't know, the UN, who also has a DNA bank on everything? Is that where your DNA is going? And is it being used for research purposes that could be going in the next shot, perhaps? Could be going into the next human evolution experiment.
Are we going to be talking about eugenics at some point?
Could be going into cloning.
Whoa.
DNA. You can create embryos from DNA and clone somebody. My understanding is in about a period of 3 weeks, but that's another show, folks. And I
don't know where to go from there.
And you have no say.
Well, and that's the thing. They can acquire your DNA and you have no say over it. So are they just doing drug samples or are they doing more? Well, that makes a provision for them to do more. So who knows? Who knows what they're doing with it? Long story short, Bill 6336, wherever bill we're on, Bill C63 is literally the most heinous attack on our fundamental rights and freedoms. And I'm kind of getting sick and tired of saying that Canada used to have these things, to be honest with you, because everybody seems to want to fight why we shouldn't have those things anymore. This bill sets us apart. This is a third world country bill. I mean, it is not a bill for Canada, and the man should be resigning immediately.
Yeah, and I just by chance I opened up my paperwork, or our paperwork, and guess what I turned to? Spending authority. This is what we were talking about, where it funds itself. So spending authority under, looks like regulation, or under Part 9, Section 139, subsection 4 says, the office may, for the conduct of the activities of the commission, the ombudsperson, and the office, spend revenues from the charges imposed under this section in the fiscal year in which they are received or in the next fiscal year. So all the money that they bring in from the perpetrators who are charged under this bill, they have 1, possibly 2 years to spend all of that money. And it doesn't say where the extra money, should there be any extra money, doesn't say where it goes to. So I thought that that was super important. And just so you know, I know we've said this before.
There you go.
regulations.
Hashtag hate Bill C63. Hate Trudeau's hate.
And under, again, Section 140, it talks about the regulations, and it is the commission who has the power to make up the regulations. The regulations are not included in this bill.
No, and that's the part that's worrisome.
It's horrible. And there are, it goes all the way from A all the way to Y. So A all the way to Y is what they have the authority to make regulations on, which is basically everything and anything they can make a regulation on. And it doesn't come up for debate. It doesn't come up for discussion. It doesn't even come up for a vote. Whatever the commissioner, one guy, decides is what the law is, with no further debate, as long as the regulations fall under A through Y and also include all the other stuff that is in this bill. And I believe there's like 300 sections to this bill. Then the regulations stand. There's no reason for argument. There's no reason for anything. And every 5 years, this bill will come up for review. So you are basically stuck with whatever the commissioner says. So you better hope whoever is writing the regulations is on side, or at least has an understanding of the rule of law or natural law, or at least, gosh forbid, has read the Canadian Bill of Rights or our Constitution. Skip Section 1 of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms and just go into the rest of the nuts and bolts. But if they haven't read that, and if they are not tuned up on the Human Rights Act and on the Criminal Code, and there's a couple other acts, and there's also some bills going through right now that it talks about and has also implanted in here. If those bills are accepted, then the commissioner will also take into consideration those bills if whoever the commissioner is that they appoint, not elected, appoint, is savvy on the law and on legislation. But based on how this is written, it already says they don't have to adhere to the law.
Right. So if you don't care about politics, this is the time you got to care. This matters. This one really, really mattered. I mean, Bill C-21 mattered. Bill C-18 mattered. Bill 11 mattered. Bill 236 mattered. They all matter. This one really matters. It looks like we've got an attorney or a minister of justice that is trying to actively destroy our country. Enough is enough. Now, what can we do? Well, it'd be really great if we had a plan. If we had a plan to, put financial sanctions on our own government, because they're obviously trying to destroy our country. That seems like it's an act of terrorism. So if we could sanction our own government, it's too bad we can't take our money out of our banks, use only cash and not use credit cards or debit cards, and then eventually stop paying taxes once the first two steps work out. If somebody was working on a plan, a full-fleshed plan on that, that'd be really great. Maybe we'll see that happen by Friday. Who knows?
Maybe a whereas statement,
maybe
imposing
some list
economic
of terms.
sanctions if terms and conditions are not met.
Maybe enough is enough with this government. So yeah, maybe by Friday something like that will get published. Who knows? Well, hopefully somebody will pick up that ball. Hey, yeah. Maybe. Anyway. Our government has gone crazy. So it's time to get the lunatics out of the... there's so many Nazis in Ottawa that we're going to call it doucheland now.
Yeah.
So,
and now this bill has already had first reading in the House. So the C stands for the House. So it's a private member's bill. Minister of Justice Arif Virani. He is a Liberal MP from the Parkdale High Park area. So hey, Parkdale High Park. If you're paying attention, election time is around the corner. You might want to not vote for Arif Virani because he is trying to put together some really nefarious stuff that goes 100% against Canadian law, Canadian human rights, and against your right to liberty and freedom and
maybe we should
right to
organize a
speech.
rally outside of his place. Hey, maybe we should go and show him what protesters actually look like. Hey,
You know what? There's another solution, guys.
Yeah.
When you don't like what your member of parliament is doing, member of parliament, legislature, or municipality for that fact, you can always show up at their house and with your little protest signs, let them know how you feel. I
Sure.
remember way back when, 2020, 2021, we were playing hockey many weeks outside of Doug Ford's house, playing hockey with our music going and signs set up. His neighbors were not so happy with
Right.
us, and neither was Dougie
And
Ford.
Jugmeat Singh's people, they put signs up they plastered his entire office, and he took it down, and they went and plastered all again with signs, and you couldn't even see the door and the windows. They plastered so many things on there.
Mhm.
So, go let them know how you feel about it. You should.
That's your right. For right now, that is still your right as a Canadian citizen to let your representatives in government understand and know how you're feeling about the job they are doing.
So that's Bill C63. We'll be back on Thursday. No clue what we're doing right now. We're so heads down with a couple other projects that we'll probably announce one of them on Thursday.
Oh, we'll definitely announce the rally March 9th, the 1984 rally at BMO Fields and then Nathan Phillips Square.
Yeah.
So we'll definitely announce that on Thursday.
Oh, I guess you'll put that up.
More details on Thursday.
You'll put that up on our website, right?
Yeah.
The events.
Yeah, I will.
Yeah, you will. Yeah.
Okay, so for all of you who don't understand, or maybe this is your first time out, technology, not my forte. Chris keeps thinking he will train me someday, and that someday my brain, my creative brain, my legally creative brain will somehow magically understand technology. He's holding out hope for me. He's praying for me. But here we are, 2 years.
Not going to give you a fish. Here's your rod. We're going to teach you how to do it.
2 years in,
be self-sufficient.
still not.
Yeah.
Still not.
So anyway, we'll be back with a few other things on Thursday. Thank you for watching. Go look at that bill and definitely, and sign up for a newsletter.
Never mind looking at the bill.
Okay.
Write to your MP and tell them how horrible this bill is and why they should vote against it.
No, but look at the bill.
That's something else you can do.
Go read the bill too. Start
Just
getting
watch
involved.
the show and pick up the sections that we did. Or you know what? Look at all that we've highlighted in this bill. So we only touched literally a small fraction, but we felt that those were the gold nuggets of this bill that you really needed to be informed of. So if you don't want to look at the bill because it is this thick, it's not 300 pages. It's over 100 pages. It's over 300 sections. So if you don't feel like reading the whole bill, just rewatch the show. Take notes of those sections that we noted, and then write your MP, drop by their office and let them know that if they want your vote again, they better start listening to you, because at the end of the day, you're in control of whether they have a job for another 4 years or not. So let them know how unhappy you are. And maybe, as I think it was Hasham or Senior Canuck or Adam Says Things, one of them said that, MPs don't read these. And he's right. They don't read these in the entirety. A lot of times they get their administrative assistants to read them, and the administrative assistants don't understand law at all, always. So they skip over it too. So your MP, I know I keep throwing it up and it throws the lights off here with the camera, but your MP may not even understand what's in this. They may have just read the title and went, oh, yeah, child, we need to protect children from sexual abuse and exploitation.
Well, I mean, how many times have we seen them talking about this is the law that we should enact, and they're repeating it from a CBC News story or some sham news article? I have no idea how these people get their information, but I'm less confident that they should be allowed to lead. Anyway, here we go. That is it for another day. Thank you. We will see you on Thursday.
Have a great week in the meantime.
Thank you for watching. Bye.